Order at 6:33 on the 8th of February. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, indivisible, with a nation under God. Thank you. We will open the agenda up, item number 2, for public comments that are not on topics that are not listed on the agenda. Any comments will limit to 2 minutes. And if you would use the raised hand portion of the Zoom, that would be great. If I don't spot you, then feel free to jump in. Anyone? Okay, we will move on to the DRB update with Rebecca Pfeiffer. Rebecca, we'll turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for all your time that you put in on the DRB board. We hear great reports. So thank you for joining us and giving us an update. So I'll turn it over to you.
Great. I'll do a quick rundown of our board and tell you all a little bit about what we're up to and some interesting things from the past year. But thank you for inviting me to come here to speak about our board. I'm really proud of the work that our board has done. I'm really proud of the members on our board. Everyone has been very dedicated. It's been, as you know, as we're holding a Zoom meeting, it's been a challenge to adjust in the past year. Last February would have probably been our last in-person meeting if we had one. I'm not sure if we had one last February or not. February or March was probably our last in-person meeting for the DRB. So it's been just about a year that we've been remote. So before I go into some of the things that we've been up to, I wanted to introduce the members. We have one member who is here with us. That's Tanner McEwen. We also have Denis Lapointe, who's the vice chair. Denis was, I think he's been re-up now at least once, and I think he's up again at the end of this year for a second term. He's been nominated as, or was appointed our vice chair of the board. Dick Thayer was just reappointed at the end of last year, so he's on at least his second term, if not his third at this point. Like they all start to roll together. So we've had a few longer term members. We also have had newly appointed Emily Byron, who's joined us for the past 2 meetings, and Matt Predum was assigned as an alternate a handful of months ago. So we have a really good mix of people who have been on the board for a couple of years, and we have some new members. Chip spent a good amount of time with the board helping to make sure we have everyone coming up to speed on what the DRB does and things to consider, kind of procedural things, but also just the important, like, what do we do? So, excuse me. As I mentioned, I'm really proud of what we do. We review any development that's coming into the city that has to go through conditional use review to our land development regulations. It's a big task. I was really fortunate in the fact that Megan Manahan had been chair for so long, and she was a great chair. And I was able to serve under her for many years and had her guidance in how to run the board, things to consider. And that's been helpful. With her leaving, I think now that's over a year, and Owen Manahan, who had been on the board for a very long time as well, just recently retired from the board. So there are definitely 2 longer term people that we miss. So we have all sorts of projects that come in. We review projects for the uses, what people are doing with their land, what they're requesting to do with their land. And then we also review projects for site plans. So a site plan is, how is the site laid out? Parking, the building size, landscaping, all sorts of considerations. And our board is fortunate that we have a DAB. So our Development Advisory Board also reviews bigger projects that go through site plan review that may be in the historic district prior to coming to us to help make recommendations on the design of the building, recommendations to help it meet the city plan, things like that, to help guide us in our review on bigger projects, which has really been good. It's a good board. They've made great recommendations for us to consider on larger site plan reviews. So with this past year, I think as everyone's top of the list would probably be COVID and remote meetings. One of the big changes for our board is that we've always been a one time a month meeting schedule. And in keeping in line with the Secretary of State's recommendations to make sure due process has been met for everyone, we've now been holding essentially 2 meetings a month. So we hold our initial meeting for the hearing, and we continue the hearing to have a second follow-up to make sure no one was unable to make it into the hearing, had technical issues, things like that. So that's been not insignificant. I know all of you are here, what is it, every other week meeting as City Council, but it does become a lot as we're meeting now twice a month, essentially, when we do have cases to consider. So I'm really proud of the board. No one's really made a big deal about it. Everyone's just kind of stepped up and rolled with it. And they've been really, really good at adjusting to the new norm. And a lot of members who have come in for review and some or members of the public who have come in for review, I think sometimes it's helpful for them because we're able to continue hearings without a month in between, so they can make changes to the site plan to react to comments from the public, comments from the board, things that may have been missed. They're able to adjust it and come back to us. Some of our interesting cases is we've had a few interesting ones. We've had some where we've had to call on the city's attorneys to assist us in the decision, some meaty ones. Some of it's like on process, some of it's on considering the weight of evidence, all those kinds of things. It's been new for our board. Again, Megan is a lawyer. She was able to help us navigate through a lot of those things just from her own professional expertise. And we've now, without someone in that type of a role on our board, we've been fortunate working with Chip. He's been able to call on the city attorney to assist us in 1 or 2 cases in the past year. So we've had some interesting developments coming into the city. We had Spectrum Youth come in for, I think they came in for conditional use consideration down on Lake Street. We have the city police department. We just had a hearing for them last week. The second hearing for that last week to the move over to the old CCV, to the CCV building, which will soon be the old CCV building as the CCV building moves downtown. So it's been a really busy several years with all the downtown development, and this past year we didn't really see a significant slowdown in the types of projects that came through. So with that, I'll leave it for questions for the board. If you have questions about types of projects we review, some of the other things that we faced in the past year or anything else, feel free to ask those questions.
Rebecca, thanks. I knew you had stepped up when Megan retired or stepped down. So thank you for that. Does anyone on the council have any questions of Rebecca?
I just wanted to say, if I can, Mr. Mayor, that I had a constituent up in my ward that had to come before the board, and I just wanted to compliment Becca on the level-headedness and the fairness and just the way that you operate the board is exactly what we would want to see from our community when people bring difficult cases. It's just the culture is great, and I really appreciate your service and the rest of your board and the way that they handle even difficult cases with a lot of grace and compassion for people who are, sometimes kind of upset about the things they're bringing before your board. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that means a lot to me. I feel like our board has a really good mix of experiences. There's age diversity, which is good. I think that that's really important on our board as well, and not always the case in my day job, I work in a capacity, not as much now as I used to, but I work in a capacity with a lot of other development review boards across the state. And in some ways, I think that was a test to see the good and the bad as to how to, running meetings, public meetings can be difficult to navigate, to make sure everyone is heard and truly heard, including my dog barking in the background. But it is difficult because this is a public forum for people to voice their opinions and thoughts, and you want to make sure people are heard and listened to and not just listened at. So that means a lot. Thank you. And I guess too, I'd also invite Tanner, who is on the call, not to put you on the spot, Tanner, because I don't think you're on the call for DRB updates, but if there's anything you wanted to add too, I'd invite you to add that.
I'd just quickly say that as one of the more recent additions to the board, I've been personally very impressed by all of the talent that I witness every time I join a meeting, and I'm learning a ton. I'm seeing, just like you said, an incredible variety of skill sets coming to bear. And I don't know, even just an interesting thing you're talking about, interesting experiences, taking the time for us to go back through geo data from Google to look at a particular case to investigate it further, and people really taking the time to make really educated decisions on these matters. It's really nice to see. So yeah, that's all I'd say. It's been an honor to work on this board.
Thank you, Tanner, and thanks for your time as well. Rebecca, are there any vacancies on the board at this time? I don't believe so.
No, well, we have one alternate position open, but we have a full board of 5 members and we have one alternate at the current time, and which has been good. We've had really good participation for most members, so we haven't had to actually appoint our alternate very often, but we do have one alternate position open.
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. Rebecca, thank you for your time, and Tanner, thank you both for serving. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and have a good night. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Have a good night. So item number 4, we'll move to Chief Lamont and the Police Department Annual Data Report. Focus on internal investigations and response to resistance.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody.
Hello,
Does everybody on the board have a copy of what we sent in?
yes.
Okay. So I will go through it. I know there's quite a bit of information there, so I'll move kind of quickly, but I'll stop at each section. So if there's any questions, we can address them. So the point of releasing this information was 2-part. It followed our roadmap, transformational roadmap, and the transparency part of it. And we wanted to release some data, not only to the council, but to the police advisory board, and also just the general public, specifically on these 2 topics. Because we know that everybody's interested in what the PD is doing, but these 2 are definitely relevant to the community in a whole. So I'll start with the internal affairs investigations that we did last year, January through December. And this includes every citizen complaint that came through our door, except ones that would have been an officer speeding. That's about the only, actually, it's about the only complaint I can think of that wouldn't be considered an internal affairs investigation. And honestly, since I've been here since July 1st, we haven't even had one of those. All the ones though that raised to an actual internal affair from January to December are on this sheet. So in that time frame, I'm sorry I'm looking down, but I have my notes as well. In that time frame, we had 13 generated internal affairs investigations that we opened and closed. Of those, we haven't broken down into internally generated complaints, which means that the complainant was somebody within our department, whether it be a coworker, or another employee, or a supervisor. And there were 2 of those. And then we have externally generated complaint, which means it came from somebody outside of our department, citizen, another department. We had 11 of those. So that made up all of the complaints we had. Following our internal complaint policy, there's 5 ways of which complaints are adjudicated, closed, completed. So they're not substantiated, which means that, just reading definitions for anybody that doesn't know, means that there's insufficient evidence to prove or disprove this complaint. This finding may be used for complaints that have gone unresolved. Exonerated means the incident occurred, but the employee's actions were justified, lawful, or proper. Unfounded, which means the complainant admits to false allegations, or the charges were false or not factual, or the employee wasn't even involved in the incident. Substantiated, which means the allegation is supported by sufficient evidence to indicate the employee did in fact commit one or more of the alleged acts, or there's a policy failure, meaning that the incident occurred, but the employee was acting in accordance with the department's directive, which now requires review and/or changes. So those are the 5 ways at which these can be closed out. So again, going back to the year 2020, we had the 11 complaints that were filed by a citizen, so externally generated complaints. Of those 11, we had 3 which were substantiated complaints. We had 3 that were not substantiated. We had 1 that was unfounded, and we had 4 that were exonerated the officers. Does anybody have any questions about those, or I can go through all of them and give you kind of a brief synopsis of those 11? And I know I'm talking fast, and there's a lot of information here.
Council, any questions?
And I will go down. I'm sorry, Mayor. I will go down and read a brief synopsis of every one of the complaints at the end of this, if you'd like.
Okay.
Go on to the second slide, and there's only 3 slides in here. The internally generated complaints, there was only 2. 1 was substantiated, 1 was non-substantiated. And the last slide is the outcome of the officers as far as discipline goes. So 9 of the complaints resulted in no disciplinary action. 1 resulted in loss of annual leave. 3 of them resulted in termination or resignation of the officer. 1 of them resulted in written reprimand, and 4 of those resulted in Act 56 reporting. So those of you that don't know what Act 56 is, Act 56 is a state statute that requires that first of all, any internal investigation, any complaint that comes into the police department that is substantiated has to be reported to the Vermont Police Academy. Once it's reported to the Vermont Police Academy through Act 56, the department is required by the statute to do a complete internal investigation or have one done on their behalf. At the end of that investigation, the entire investigation goes down to the Vermont Police Academy. There's 3 categories of which Act 56 takes place. 1 is category A, which means the employee has been arrested. We had one of those this year in 2020. That's an automatic. That's a Class A infraction. Class B infraction is kind of a catch-all. Class B infraction of Act 56 is anything from it's not an arrest, but it's anything that the employee could have done, to include lying, excessive force. I would consider those a more serious violations of policy other than actually getting arrested. Then there's C, an Act 56 C violation is around people cheating on their training, shorting their training. It's more revolving around the academy standards. We haven't had any of those. All of ours of the 2020, the 13 of them were all B violations of Act 56, except the arrest we had, and we all know who that officer was. That was an A violation. So again, 4 of these had to be reported down to the academy. So what happens at that point when they get reported down to the academy then has the option, after they look at the investigation we did, they have the option of opening their own investigation to see if they're happy with our conclusion, or they can send it to a committee. The committee is now 24 members at the academy. The committee will decide if that officer is a candidate for decertification. If that officer is decertified by the academy, that's forever. So there is a grievance process, but my understanding is that's not very likely. Right now, that new committee, no, I don't want to speak too much for the academy, but that my understanding as of last Friday was that new committee just started up this year for the 24. It went from 12 to 24 members. So there's a couple of officers are pending that committee right now with some serious Act 56 violations. And I'm not talking, we have one that is from the arrest. But there are officers around the state that are looking at Act 56 violations. So Act 56, we fell right into that with this new IA policy. You have to, it's a statute, but all of our cases have gone down there for the review. So it works out well. I can read real quick if you'd like, unless you have questions first about what each of these complaints were.
Chief, I just have a couple questions about the Act 56.
Yes.
How soon do you guys have to send that report down to the academy? What's the time
I
frame?
can't hear you, Chad.
Yep, great question. So from the time we get the complaint, we have 10 days to substantiate the complaint. So if we get a complaint that
Still can't hear you,
10
Chad.
days the time we get to substantiate, whoops. If it's substantiated, we have 10 days to send it down with the initial information we have to the academy saying, hey, look, Officer A, we had a complaint against him. This is the information we have. We are going to now begin our investigation. You have 10 days to do that. If it's not substantiated, which
Chad, while you're working on that, Chief, I know we had a policy review back in, I believe, November, where we were looking at the different forms that would be submitted for complaints.
Mhm.
Many of these were prior to that activity and that approval. How were these complaints registered compared to what the
these
new
can be-
policy is today?
the complaints can come to us in any form. They can come verbal, written, anonymously. We'd prefer written, but they can come to us anyway. And Act 56 is a
Just me, or can anyone else hear Mo?
Hey, Tim, this is
You can
Dom. I think you might have an audio problem.
Maybe it's me then.
I think it's you. You want to maybe log back in?
Okay, so I'll go back to Chad real quick.
Okay.
Chad, so when a complaint comes in, we have 10 days to which to notify the academy. In that, normally we do it much quicker than that, but we don't have to tell them anything unless we substantiate the initial information. So once we do that, and that's really usually a very quick turnaround to do that, we have 10 days to send them the initial complaint, let them know we started an investigation. Once we tell them that, then we have 30 days to get a complete investigation to them, unless it's something that's going to take much longer, like an arrest case. And then so they know it's ongoing. They know you're doing your job and getting it out. It's due diligence to do it. Then once it's done, you send them your complete packet. But it's a quick turnaround for them to know that you're on it. You can't sit on it. It has to go.
Okay, thank you. And then the other quick question, if our academy decertifies a police officer, is that information shared with the other states?
That's a great question. I don't know how it works with other states. I can tell you that I sent that question to them on Friday, internal for the state of Vermont, and I was told that that information is shared back to us, the agent, the original hiring agency, and it's shared in Vermont. And I don't know about other states, but there's a new law or new statute that came out in October. Forgive me, I don't remember the number, but what it says, if you are an officer in any state and you want to apply to a department within state of Vermont now, there's a waiver form you have to sign. If you don't sign it, you can't be even eligible for hiring in Vermont. Once you sign it, it says that all of your background information, including internals, is now open to that department. So if any officer in the state wants to come to the state of Vermont, they have to sign that, which gives that new potential hiring department the right to every piece of their background, including internal investigations. So for that peace of mind, the state of Vermont is now covered. Other states I can't speak of.
Can you hear now, Tim?
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear us now? He must not still be able to hear us.
Tim,
Any more questions, or you want me to go through the synopsis?
I think Kate has a question. Tim, are you able to hear us? Doesn't look like it. All right, Kate, why don't you ask your question?
Chief, I don't have a good sense of context for this. So we're looking at 13 complaints for
Yes.
a year's time.
Yes.
Is that like a normal average number of complaints for a department of this?
I would be guessing to say I don't know of any place to even compare that to. I can tell you that of these 13, 4 of them were actually 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 8 were all from the same person. So I don't know if that changes anything, but that reduces it. If you take out that one complaint, it drops it down to 8.
Yeah, I guess my question is really about context, and maybe there's a way that we could figure out if there's some statewide data that we could, have some comparison, because
Yeah.
while I don't think the right answer is for us to have thousands of complaints, I
Right.
also think that this seems like a fairly small number, particularly when you factor in that so many of them came from one person. So I'm just a little bit curious about that, and I'm sure we'll learn more as we go on through the years looking at the data, but it just struck me as it's a pretty small pool.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, I can speak. It's hard to compare to, from my last job. I can tell you that looking at these complaints, a couple of them are serious complaints. There's no downside to or downplaying that. But generally speaking, these are the type of complaints I'm used to getting. Generally speaking, this is the outcomes that typically come with. It's a lot easier in this position because we have body worn cameras, which are awesome. But generally speaking, this is the typical complaint that you get, because in this job, you are not going to please everybody, and they are not going to like the outcome of some of the interactions. And thankfully, we have body worn cameras, but I don't think this is a large number at all. But again, we do have a couple on here that are serious. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you.
Hey, Chad, we're going to pass the gavel to you until Tim gets the audio sorted out.
Okay. If there's no other questions, does anyone have any other questions before we move on? All right, carry on, Chief, with a synopsis of all the complaints.
Yes, sir. It's going to be quick, and they're very brief because, again, these are internal investigations. But the first few came in before I was in this spot, but I generally was able to get some background on them by looking at the internals that were done. The first one came in February of 2020, but it was a June of 19 case. The allegation was the officer had removed pills from a person's mouth on a car stop when and we have great video of it. She grabbed the pill bottle when he asked her what that was, and she quickly ingested the pills. The issue with that is you can't reach in somebody's mouth, regardless of the reason you're doing it. He resigned during that investigation. That was the outcome of that one. The second complaint came in April of 2020. We all know what that one was. That was the allegation that an officer was charged with some crimes in Sheldon and some crimes from years prior. He was terminated while that investigation was at the conclusion of that internal investigation, pending the criminal charges. Neither here nor there, but those charges, as we know, that those have been dropped at this point. But he was terminated. The next ones came in June of 2020. These are complaint 3, 4, 5, and 6. They're all in very quick succession. This female and her live-in boyfriend were both arrested on the same incident. She made her allegation was that excessive force was used on both her and her boyfriend, and that the rest were both false. There was no policy violation. There was no use of force, unreasonable use of force in that case. The body worn, again, if you want to rely on body worn camera footage, it's really good footage. The officers were exonerated in this, and she is also the same person from number 8 from October 2020. She had, and I'm not, it's neither here nor there, but she has roughly 200 incidents with us in the calendar year 2020. She's complaining that we aren't investigating her crime. She now lives in another town. Number 7, externally generated case, street crimes unit was being alleged that they were following this person around and had stopped them for suspicion of DLS, driving with license suspended, after not being able to stop them previously in the day. That individual was under suspension. They did not stop him at the time when they couldn't in their unmarked vehicle. He made a complaint that he was being harassed by street crimes unit and is not substantiated. We've had some discussions with that individual since then and discussed why it's okay to stop somebody or see somebody after the fact, after they've driven. And even if you didn't stop when you saw them driving, you knew they were under suspension, dealt with it later in time, it's okay to do that. You don't have to make the stop right then and there. So that's been kind of cleared up. Number 9, externally generated, October 2020. Allegation that officer used department resources to ascertain private information. That's a big one. Number 9, that's a big allegation. If somebody was actually found to have done that using department resources to ascertain privileged information, that would be immediate decertification by the academy. That one was unfounded, meaning it never happened. And the reason that one was listed as unfounded and false was because everything our officers do is recorded, from phone calls to every keystroke on the computer to every time they call dispatch for a license plate or anything. We had a statewide search done on the information he supposedly had, and it took quite a while. We had to call the state police to do it, because they were able to check every single terminal in the state of Vermont, which, by the way, is something like 200 terminals, and he didn't have any. He had never requested any of that information. That was a complete false allegation. So that was a good one to find, because that would have been his career. Number 10, externally generated, August 2020. Allegation officers had followed the complainant's estranged wife to go into a vehicle to get her belongings. So this one was substantiated. Not getting a whole lot into it, but the officers were called to a verbal domestic in a driveway. The ex-wife, or estranged wife, not ex-wife yet, wanted to get her belongings out of the car before she left. He said no. They allowed her to get stuff out of the car. You can't do that. Even if you were co-owners of a vehicle or house, when one person says yes and one says no, you can't do that. They were reprimanded on that and a loss of the AL on that. We have since spoken to both those people as well, and the intent was good, to end a fight happening right then and there, and all she wanted was one small thing out of the car. You can't do that. Next one, externally generated. Street crimes unit was continuously near this individual and bothering him. He was under suspension. No policy violation. They were looking for somebody else that he was involved with, but he was under suspension. Number 12, December 2020, allegation into complaint officer. Another officer had not sufficiently, one officer said another officer had not sufficiently investigated a call for service. That was not accurate. The officer that made a complaint had no idea what the first officer had done. That was easy to disprove when we followed the investigation, see where it had ended up. And the last one, internally generated, officer violating policy when he was given a directive by one of the command staff, and he violated it. He resigned during our investigation. And that was it for 2020, which was enough, by the way.
Thank you. Tim, can you hear us?
I can now, Chad. Thank you.
Okay, take it away,
I'm
sir.
sorry that was quick and down and dirty, but that's what we had in 2020. 2021, we're doing the same thing. We're going to keep track of it the same way. And our intention is to post it more often, to bring it to you more often, so we're not going through so many at once, but you're always welcome to get a hold of me if you have questions.
Chad, you want to finish this section? I'm not sure where you're at. Why don't you just wrap this section up and then I'll go from there.
Okay, we just did the synopsis. Any city councilors have any questions?
I have one question. I just wanted to double check my understanding, Chief,
Yeah.
that these are all of the formal written complaints that were received in calendar year 2020. So, when we did the updated policy a couple months back, you had shown us the new form. And so when we get this report, these are all of the formal complaints, right?
Formal, I say formal, it's anything though. It could be verbal, anonymous, formal, informal, anything. Yes. Anything we did an internal investigation on 2020 is right there.
And are there, I guess with the verbals, what rises, if you could just remind me and I'm sure some folks listening, what rises to the level of something that actually gets investigated?
So the only thing that won't go to an actual internal investigation is a police officer driving too fast, or a police officer being rude to somebody, simply being rude to somebody. I mean, if somebody's going above and beyond, and it gets into above, somebody is short or discourteous with me, that's not going to go to an internal investigation. If it turns into a pattern, yes, but those are conversations that a supervisor has with a subordinate. Those aren't internal investigations. But pretty much that's about it. Pretty much everything else is going to go to an internal investigation. We don't, we'd rather do it that way. But even the short verbal discussions that a supervisor has with a subordinate over driving too fast or being rude or discourteous, those are still, we keep track of those. They just don't rise to an internal investigation.
Okay, thanks very much. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other city council members have any questions? Jim?
Yeah, just, Chief, it showed that your total calls for service in 2020 were 11,764. And I know we're losing them, but do you know how many of those were city, how many were town?
I don't have in front of me, but I can tell you that based on my fairly decent memory, somewhere around 4,500 are to the town.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. If that's it, I'll go on to the response resistance, if that's okay.
Does anyone, let's see if anyone from the public has any questions before we power on. I'm looking, I'm not seeing anything.
Chad Reese has his hand up.
Oh, go, sorry, Reese, I can't see it. Go ahead.
It's okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. I just want to start with saying, Chief Lamoth, I really appreciate the increased transparency and that this is a step towards doing that. So I want to acknowledge that's a big move towards fulfilling the new plan. I think, one of the questions that I had was, and this is, I think, similar to Kate's, which is, looking at the data with one officer being terminated as the outcome of an internal investigation, and then two being resigning mid-investigation. That's 3 people out of a police department. That doesn't seem spectacularly large. And you said that, it's hard to kind of compare this to other PDs, but I wonder if there's any reflection on what that means in terms of either a relative year or in general, that to me just at first glance seems like a lot of people. I would also be interested in the data of knowing what the race and gender data is for the officer outcomes, that's something that's in the RTR data, but not in the officer outcome stuff. And then the last question that I have, which is also a reflection, is, and looking at the data collection of RTR, I'm really confused by the racial categories, of which there are 3. One is white Caucasian, another one is Asian community, and the third one is, and I'm quoting, color community. I'm really confused. I have not seen this language used anywhere before. So I'm curious if it correlates with data tracking at the state or nationwide level. I will say, again, at first glance, seeing this language used, which to me I've never seen used anywhere else, feels like it's a really important reflection for the communities to see on the work that the SAPD really needs to do around race, because that's that feels really out of line, I think, with how people are describing categorizing using that data, and I was really surprised and shocked to see it. So thank you.
Yes. Should I go?
Yep, go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, Reese, I do apologize for that. You're right about the categories. I mean, being perfectly honest with you, I didn't do the categories, but I understand what you're saying. I know what they're supposed to mean, I think, but I did not pick the terminology. But you're absolutely right. That should have been better done more wisely. I know exactly what the community, I just happen to know who the people were that were the use of force or the response resistance was used on, so I could answer those questions, but it could have been a better use of terminology. But that's on me, because I'm the one responsible for it, even though I didn't put it together. That's on me. But I will do the response resistance. So in the 2020 calendar year, we had 37 response resistance incidents. Out of 11,764 calls for service, we had 725 arrests, 37 response resistance. So that's 0.31% of our calls. Of those, going by gender first, 30 males, 7 females. Of those, going to Reese's, 35 of those were white. There was one black male and one Hispanic. One black male and one Asian male. Of the ages, kind of interesting, it's all over the board, which I guess you would expect, with the majority being kind of what I would expect. Most of them were in the young male age, being the 21 to 40 made up majority of the group. We had one very young individual who was 6. So I guess I'll explain that one in a second. And one that was a little bit older, being over 61. Taser, which is always a topic of discussion. The Taser deployments, we had 5 of which a Taser was displayed but not discharged. And we had 3 of which a Taser was actually discharged. And then in the back, the last page just kind of explains what some of the response resistance, what the techniques are, just to give you an idea in case people didn't know. I mean, preferably de-escalation is your number one tool. It should always be in command presence, verbal communication. Escort, so all of this is response resistance. So escort just means when even if you grab somebody's wrist, when you're handcuffing them, if you have to do any type of manipulation to the wrist or grab the wrist and hold it still, more than just anything more than compliant handcuffing is a response resistance. All the way through to less lethal use is recorded as response resistance, and less than lethal is like a beanbag round. It's all recorded. And our officers are doing response resistance forms more than they ever have. That's across the state. That's not just us. Again, anything above compliant handcuffing now requires a form. So you're seeing them coming in now, and you're watching the video, and sometimes you have to look real close to see why they even did one. But if you're handcuffing somebody and they tense up and start to pull their arm away, and you pull their arm back, they're doing a use of force for that, even though you watch a video, you're not even catching it because it's so slight. And it's just a person tensing up, but they're doing a response to resistance. And real quick, I'll just go through why, the breakdown a little bit more of those 2 that kind of stand out. The one that was over 61 years old, that was a court order to vacate his residence. He wouldn't leave. The officers went in and just did an escort control, which basically they each grabbed one arm, and while he was standing, and walked him out of his house. That's response resistance. The under 15 was a 6-year-old. That video is kind of hard to watch because DCF had 4 people with this child for 2.5 hours, and they couldn't get him out of the car. They called us because their policy doesn't allow them to go to put hands on the child. So after over 2 hours, they called us. We went down, and our officer went down and reached in and helped get the child out just by grabbing the child's arm and getting him out without any. But it's a response resistance. We should not be in those positions ever, because again, it makes it look like the police are doing something that we shouldn't have any involvement in. But those are calls we deal with all the time because their policy doesn't allow them to go to touch a child. Taser, 3 times it was discharged, but 5 times it was displayed. So that's pretty common. I would say if you look through our response resistance this year, you'll find that I don't have the breakdown of the number. We do. Firearms displayed 19 times. So if you take those 37, 19 times firearms are displayed. But obviously we didn't have any shootings this year. So you almost cut our numbers in half just by taking those out. So firearms displayed, those are felony car stops. That's a necessity on a felony car stop. So that alone cuts our response resistance down in half because those are response resistance just for displaying a firearm. And
Chief, can you give an example of one of those felony car stop? What's that?
I can. So felony car stops aren't all that common, but the reason numbers like 19 sounds high, and the reason is because typical felony car stop doesn't, if you can help it, it doesn't happen to you have 2 or more officers on scene. So there's 2 firearms, as many as 4 firearms. If you're lucky, you have at least 4 of you. So there's 4 firearms at a time, and that's 4 response resistance. Just to clarify, response resistance is however many people are there doing it. So if there's 1 officer, there's 1. If there's 4, there's 4. So the numbers add up quickly. So a felony car stop. The best example, easiest example I have is a suspect in a violent crime, bank robbery. The one used to force on here with the African American and the black individual, it was a robbery. And that's what then I can tell you that firearms were drawn on that. And that's what it was, robbery at a store, went into the parking garage, and that's where he was. Everybody, when our guys got to the store, he's up in the parking garage, he's up there right now. And that's how that was. So, but a felony car stop is exactly that. You have information that leads you to stop a vehicle, typically that was a firearm involved or weapon involved. And on that car stop, you're stopping it and you're not approaching it. You're calling everybody out of the car back to you. And typically you have weapons drawn on that car because that was the information you had. That is a typical felony car stop. And again, not common, I would say. My experience in my old office, 5 to 10 a year.
And if you have 2 or more officers, then that doubles the amounts of RTRs.
Yeah, felony car stops. I mean, when you're trained at the academy level, you should never do them alone. You'll follow a car at a safe distance for a while rather than do it alone, because if it's that dangerous to be called a felony car stop, the whole point is to have help there. So ideally you have at least 2, if not 4 of you. It's set up for 4 of you, but two is more realistic in this rural area.
Chief, was the city police department involved with this stop of the individual on the hit and run up in Highgate?
The fatal hit and run?
Yes.
No, we were involved in the crash. We were all there, and it was actually the Trooper Underwood from St. Albans VSP that stopped the individual.
Okay, does any city councilors have any other questions?
Yeah, Kate's got her hand up.
Oh, Kate, go ahead. How come I can't see hands up? Go ahead, Kate.
I'll
Sorry.
actually put my hand up next time.
Oh.
I wanted to start by saying thank you to Reese for pointing out this issue that we have with terminology. It was one of the things that really confused me as I looked at the data. So I'm glad that we're going to correct that. Let's make sure that we're using appropriate language. That's really important. My next question is, again, kind of about context. This kind of data is really new to me, so I don't have any sense of whether this number of response to resistance reports is in line, is similar to what other police departments have, or matches what we've done in years past. Do you think, will we compare this year over year going forward, Chief? Or do you think we'll compare to state stats? I know we can't do that tonight, but is that something that we could get to?
Well, it's kind of funny you say that, because so I spent a little bit of time, not a lot, but trying to find FBI supposedly compiles these stats from all over, from hundreds, I don't know, it's thousands of agencies, and I couldn't find a single stat to compare it to because I was kind of curious myself. There's probably something out there, I just couldn't find it. As far as statewide, I don't know of any database where I can compare it. I'd like to find one, but the only thing that our state, Vermont, compares stats to is this traffic stop data. That's comparable. That's always comparable. As far as response resistance, I don't know. I know that Valcor, which is a system we use, just started tracking response resistance on that system this year. So maybe in years to come, that's going to be easy to track. There's going to be a reason why they added that in, but I don't know how long that's going to be before they actually have a system that does that. I don't know, but I can't tell you how to. In all my years of doing this, I've never seen one department to compare to another department. We used to compare barracks to barracks all the time just to get an idea, but I've never seen a department compare to department. And there may be a company out there that's tracking it, but it's a little different. Vermont is, well, I shouldn't say it. Before this year, I would say Vermont was very report heavy on response resistance. Everything was a response resistance if it was above non-compliant handcuffing. But nationwide, I think you're going to see Vermont first, one of the first states to have a statewide policy on response resistance. But I think you're likely to see a nationwide policy here soon. And then you may see some very close you may see some stats that are easy to compare. But right now, I just don't know what our state to any other state. I think they're so different on what they call a use of force or response resistance. A lot of states, what we report, they wouldn't even think of reporting.
Based on your experience with the state police chief, do these numbers kind of make sense?
I can tell you the barracks I had, we had within 1 or 2 troopers of the same size as our PD, roughly. Call volume wise, we were running 6,500 calls a year, so about half the calls. We were running average, really close, 35 to 40 use of forces a year. So I'd say about the same number for about half the calls. But the calls are a little different because our Valcourt system records car stops as calls. So the numbers are off that way as well. So it's probably very similar.
Thank you.
Tom, go ahead.
Just a little bit of context, I think, to Kate's question. First off, this is the annual report out in the policies that we adopted that we said we would do. But it's for all of 2020. And so, arguably, the wheels came off halfway through the year for us, right? And we put the wheels back on for the remaining 6 months. And this snapshot represents both of those periods, right? So one of the best ways for us to benchmark, I think, is against ourselves a year from now to look, are we getting better or are we getting worse? And the folks that are on the team to give us the perspective and the advice is the consultants that we retain, right? So, if Kate, you're looking for some perspective on these, send me an email and I can forward it on to them, say, help us get some context here.
All right, thank you. Does anyone from the public have any questions for the chief? Any comments? I'll probably need help. There's a couple pages. I obviously cannot see hands, so if someone has popped their hand up, go ahead and speak.
Zach Scheffler has his hand up.
Oh, Zach, go ahead.
Hey everybody. Thanks for being here. And yeah, Chief Lamoth, thank you so much for presenting and talking to us about this data specifically. I guess I had 2 or 3 questions. I'll keep it short, but I just wanted to understand more deeply what the term firearm displayed means. What scenarios does this include? Is a firearm in that situation drawn on a subject or near a subject, or simply presented in another way? I just really wanted to learn more about that particular classification.
So firearm displayed is very similar to taser displayed. If the firearm comes out of the holster and just is displayed in any way that the person, the suspect or subject that you're dealing with can see that, and it changes their behavior, leads them to believe that it may be used on them or towards them, then that is displayed. And that also includes at a car, pointed at a car where they don't even know you have it out. It also counts.
Right on. Thanks so much. That makes sense. And I just had one more question. Are there, and this might be a deeper question, but based on your understanding of the data that you've seen and you're presenting here, what are some specific trends that you've seen that you think indicate areas to improve? And if any changes what if any changes are in the department are being informed by the data? How is this affecting your plan making moving ahead into 2021, particularly around stops, arrests, response to resistance, that kind of thing?
I think that this answer isn't going to be quite as good, but one of the biggest things we're seeing right now is people are hesitant to use force, officers, response resistance, and we're seeing a lot of hesitation, which worries me a little bit. And I know that's not the greatest answer, but we're seeing officers put themselves in danger and risk because they're afraid to put hands on people with the fear of retribution from the public. And so that worries me. We need to train, get back to the officers understanding that unfortunately sometimes you have to stop somebody from doing something quicker than you are. So there has to be some training. We've gone so far one way that we have to get to where we can get back to de-escalate. We have to get more de-escalation so people understand how to talk to somebody quicker, faster, and get them to listen to what you want. And if they don't, we need to get to some more, some better response resistant techniques so it doesn't come to force, but it gets to where we can divert somebody from acting the way they are without carrying on and endangering other public. What I'm finding is officers are getting into more of a stalemate, and that's not ever a good situation. So that's the biggest trend I'm seeing is these stalemates are happening. And we're always taught the longer you're on scene with somebody, the worse it is. The longer you debate with somebody, the worse it is. And I think de-escalation is great. We just need to there's got to be a part 2 to it, because time is important. Time is good for you, but there comes a point where you're just debating and it doesn't work. So I'm looking forward to the next generation of de-escalation training, the next evolution of it, because of what I understand, talking to people in other states, they're seeing this everywhere. And I think that's going to be our biggest hurdle this year is what's next. And that's what our officers are all looking for is what can we do when we're de-escalating and we're just not getting anywhere and everybody's at a stalemate because the person you're dealing with is waiting for you to do something to move this situation along and the officer isn't sure what they want to do. So we're looking for the next training level. As far as arrests and everything, COVID has really slowed us down with proactive work, which is okay. But we're looking forward to getting back into a normal routine where we can do car stops and people are safe and the community knows we're being out there proactive, and we're getting a lot of complaints about speeders, and a lot of it is because we aren't being proactive, and we'd like to get back into that. But we just want to be part of the community in a safe manner and get better at de-escalation, better at communicating with everybody, and do it in a healthy way.
And if I had a quick moment for just a follow-up question, and then a couple follow-ups, what metrics would you point to that would indicate that that there was areas of that was being improved upon this scenario? What metrics would you point to in the data specifically that would give us an indication that that outcomes were being improved?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't know if you could say this year we had 37 use of response resistance. Next year we have 32. I don't know if we're going to see that. I mean, my experience has been fairly status quo. I mean, you have years that go up a little bit, and then years that go down a little bit. I'd like to say it next year it's going to reduce, a few or 5%, and then next year after that it's going to reduce some more. And there's our answer. But and maybe that's the case. But we lose the towns, we lose cases, so theoretically maybe it should go down anyway. But then again, we're requiring our officers to report use of response resistance for every time they touch somebody, for the most part. So the numbers may actually go up because of our reporting requirements now. So the only data we're going to have, I think, it's twofold. It's this response resistance and how many we get, and then what the quality of them is. And it's also going to be the internal investigations and what the complaints are. If we get no internal investigations based on use of force, I think that's a great thing. If we get response resistance, and even if the numbers are generally high, but you look at what they are, and they're just above involuntary handcuffing, and they're compliant escorts, then I think we're doing very well. If we're getting to knock down, drag out response resistance, then we've got some de-escalation stuff to work on.
Thank you so much for that. And the last thing I just had to follow up with Reese, I'm really interested in the race and gender of the officers in the data about or concerning the officer outcome data. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Zach. Are there any other questions? Go ahead and speak up.
Chad, I actually, Zach re-asked a question that I had was, what was the race and gender of the officers in the outcome data, which that wasn't named. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So-
An outstanding question.
Which officers would you like to know?
It's not, the race and gender classifications are not listed in the officers section. It's listed in the RTR data, but not in the officer outcome data.
So of all the officers, currently, well, I can just say it. Currently, we have every officer in our department is currently white Caucasian. So everybody that's involved in any of the RTRs are white Caucasian. As far as gender, that I would have to look at because we do have some female officers, and I would have to see how many of them were involved in any of these.
So is this information going to be posted on our website?
This is what I gave you now is yes.
Okay, can we add that piece and then repost it?
To the response resistance?
No, to the gender.
Yep. Of just the officers.
Yep. That's correct, right, Reese?
All 37 response resistance, you want to know what the gender was?
There were like the pie charts in the officer outcome data that didn't
Yeah.
include race and gender. Yeah. So
If
that's what
I think it's the IA section. They want the
Yeah.
structure of the IA section to reflect. the
So
same-
not response resistance.
Yeah, put it in the IA section.
I can do that. I can tell you though, just while we're here, that in the IA section that every one of these was a white male, but I can put that on there. None of the females had an IA.
Okay, thank you. Are there any others? Go ahead and speak up. Someone's gonna have to show me how to see if there's a hand up. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to put my hand up either, so.
No hands, Chad.
I'm feeling really old right now. I really am, I'm telling you. Okay, go ahead, Tim, it's all yours.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks for covering. So we're going to move on to item number 5, which is a public hearing and discontinuance of Crest Road. We'll turn it over to Chip Sawyer.
Thank you very much. Every year we have to certify our highway mileage with VTrans. And one of the things that's been hanging out there for a while is that our certified map still shows the portion of Crest Road that's in the city. For a long time, Crest Road has not really been a city street at all. NMC's expansion over time has built over the road. They've built their own parking lot and access road that accomplishes the goal of giving access into the site. And VTrans will pester me now and again saying, I think they know what's going on, and they ask if we want to remove it. In order to remove a road from our highway certification, we basically just have to pass a motion discontinuing it. We do have to hold a public hearing to discontinue a road, but this is really just a process paperwork thing. In your packet, there's a resolution to the effect of discontinuing the road that we'll distribute around for signatures later this week if you'd like to consider it. But that's this agenda item. I would suggest
Sorry, Chip, we haven't done any maintenance on that little section in forever,
not
right?
that I know of. Not that I
Okay.
know of. Yeah. And we don't have to concern ourselves with a portion of Crest Road that's in the town, only the portion that's in the city. So to follow protocol, we would have to follow a quick public hearing and then if you would consider the motion.
That was going to be my question, that the town did own part of that as well.
Yeah,
Crest Road.
it starts in the town and then it used to loop back into the city and provide access to what became the cobblestone building. The hospital purchased the cobblestone building, started developing the area, and Crest Road kind of fell by the wayside at that point.
So you're looking to come back with and do the public hearing, or are we considering this a public hearing?
Oh, we can, yeah, you can do it right now. Ask if there's any comment. There probably won't be. Then consider the resolution.
Members have any questions or comments for Chip? it all makes sense, Chip. So all those entertain a motion to discontinue that.
I'll make the motion that we discontinue the Crest Road within the city limits, the portion within the city limits.
I'll second it.
Motion from Chad, seconded by Jim. Are there any other further comments? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor of this motion, give a thumbs up or an aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Chip, we'll move on to item number 6, which is also public hearing regarding Coda Court.
Yep. This one carries a little bit more weight, but basically it's not really going to change current practice very much. Coda Court was built as a subdivision in the 2000s. All of the houses have since been sold, and the road, the cul-de-sac off of Nason Street was already being plowed by Public Works. And in fact, former Public Works Director Alan Robtoy had already negotiated with the developer on a payment to the city to do the final paving of the street. But we just had never gotten around to actually filing the paperwork for the city to acquire the street and make it a public city street. That was the arrangement with the developer and the city, our predecessors. And so it was another thing where we just need to dot the I's and cross the T's in terms of the paperwork. So in your packet, you'll see the warranty deed that conveyed the street to the city, left out some of the things that we typically don't want to own, like services, pump stations, all that good stuff. Anything associated with the private sewer and water services and stormwater services, but we'll take over the mains once you're into the main conveyance system. We made sure we didn't get transferred over any of the electrical or telecommunications utilities or any of the things that we typically don't take care of. But then there's a form to fill out when you complete and open a city street, and that's also included in the packet. So typically it's the same thing. Hold a quick public hearing, see if there's any comment, and then consider accepting the street.
Couple of questions, Chip. So it does have city water and sewer on Coda Court, right?
Yes.
We've been maintaining that right along.
Well, I don't think it had ever broken. I think if it had, it would have put us in a position of, kind of going into a street we actually don't own yet and fixing it, which we probably would have done anyway. But technically now the city does own it, but we still need to go through the process of having the city council sign the form that accepts it.
Out of curiosity, how many homes are on Coda Court?
I believe there's 1 duplex and 4 single-family homes, if I'm not mistaken.
Have any questions for Chip? Hearing none.
I move that the city approve the attached certificate of completion and opening for Coda Court.
Second.
Have a second by Kate. Motion by Chad, second by Kate. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none. All those in favor, give a thumbs up or a yay.
Yay.
James. Motion passes unanimously. And now certification of highway mileage, Chip, why don't we have you?
Yep, it's the annual certification we have to do, and the form in your packet includes the anticipated removal of Crest Road and the anticipated addition of Coda Court.
Chip, seems as we do have a few viewers here tonight, can you explain the importance of having a certificate of mileage within the city?
Every municipality in the state receives funding from VTrans on a formula based on the type of highway that you have and the mileage of each type. There's class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 4. And I believe you only receive funding for class 1 through class 3. So your class 1 highways are actually the numbered routes that a municipality's taken over and that the state doesn't take care of. So for instance, the city's taken over Route 7, Route 36. I'm blanking on the others right now, Route 38. Yeah, and class 2 roads are the municipal roads that connect numbered state routes. And then class 3 is all your regular side streets, neighborhood streets. But I'm rambling at this point. Chad, the gist of your question is that we receive formula funding from VTrans to maintain these roads based on the mileage. And as part of that, VTrans makes us go on the record saying, this is the mileage of the various types of highways that we have in our community.
Thank you, sir. I'll move to approve the certificate of mileage for the city.
I'll second that. And I'll also say that that pot for the first time in a long time is going to be bigger this year that the formula funds are cut up from. So we should receive a little more, at least in this round, than we have in the last couple of years.
Nice.
We have a motion from Chad, seconded by Mike. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor, give a thumbs up or a aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. So let's move on to item number 8, public hearing for Spectrum Youth Services. I
The
see
city
that.
has been approached by Spectrum Youth and Family Services to sponsor a Vermont Community Development Program grant to fund their operations, opening up the new youth drop-in center on Lake Street. I think most city councilors know the drill at this point. In order to access VCDP funds, you have to go through a municipality like us. And the process requires that we hold a public hearing with the city council, and the city council approves a resolution to go forward with the application. So there's a draft of the application included in your packet, but basically it's seeking $500,000 to fund operation expenses of the new youth drop-in center. And we have some representatives of Spectrum here tonight, and perhaps Mark and David and your team could talk a little bit about the Youth Drop-In Center and the importance of this funding.
Yes, great. Thanks. Thanks, Chip. Thanks, everyone, for having us here tonight. And so my name is Mark Redmond. I'm the director of Spectrum. Our finance director is here, David Brace, as well. So Spectrum, we've been working in St. Albans for about 5 years. The Department of Children and Families asked us a few years ago to hire some staff who would work with young people who are in the foster care system in Franklin County. So between age 14 up to 22, so those kids are living in foster homes. We're helping them get ready to finish their education, find an apartment to lease, things like that, teach them independent living skills. And those two workers have said to me for quite a while, there are young people in St. Albans who really need the help that Spectrum can offer. Some of them are in foster care. They used to be in foster care. Some of them have gotten in trouble with the law and they have arrest records. They've dropped out of school. Some of them have addiction difficulties. So we raised the funds to open up what we call a drop-in center, which will be very similar to the one we have in Burlington. We have a drop-in center in Burlington. It's open every weekday. Young people can come in. We don't need your social security number. We don't need your Medicaid number. We'd like to know your name. And you can come and get a free hot lunch, free hot dinner, change of clothes, take a shower, do your laundry. We'll help you look for work. We'll help you go back to school. We'll help you get your GED. If you have difficulties with mental health problems or addiction problems, we can help with that. We can find you a mentor. So that's what we want to do. We want to open up a drop-in center very, very similar to that in St. Albans. We're leasing space at 223 Lake Street. If we get a few more permits and a few more plumbing things done, we should be able to open up within 2 weeks. We've already hired a manager. We have 2 what we call recovery coaches on staff, and we're recruiting an AmeriCorps worker. So one thing that'll be a little different in our drop-in center in Burlington, we really start with like age 17 and 18. but we had a big call with people from NCSS and the hospital, Vermont Adult Learning, and they all said you need to go younger in St. Albans, because in Burlington, we have the Boys and Girls Club, we have the King Street Center, we have Sarah Holbrook Center. They're taking care of those high school kids, but there really isn't, there's nothing like that in St. Albans. So we're gonna go younger. We're gonna start at age 14 and go off from there. So those are the kids we want to work with. Kids who are in DCF custody, or used to be kids who are literally homeless. We've heard of kids who are living in the woods or living precariously housed. And we want to help them, to feed them, obviously. The Notch is going to provide the health care. Vermont Adult Learning is going to provide the tutoring for us. NCSS is going to provide the mental health supports, and they have a jobs program. Howard Center is up there for addiction help. So we really have a lot of the pieces in place. What we need is that physical place for young people to go. So our board made a commitment. We had a couple of donors come through with big donations last summer, and our board made a commitment to stay open for 3 years, no matter what happens. Even if we can't raise the money, we're open for 3 years. But then we heard about this community development block grant money that's available, and we can get up to 500,000. If we do that, we'll spend that over 2 years. Then we have to make a 5-year commitment. So now we have a 7-year commitment to St. Albans instead of a 3-year. And based on the people I know who work up in St. Albans, like, yeah, we could use Spectrum for 7 years. So I want us to be there. We're there. We just celebrated 50 years. I want to be there 50 years. So anyway, so that's where we're at. So you have to apply for it on behalf of us. We cannot legally apply for that money. The city of St. Albans has to apply for it. So, Chip, how was that? Was that a good enough introduction?
I have some tips. Let's go again from the top, Mark. And that was perfect.
Okay.
Mark, this is Tim. Thanks for joining us tonight. I think you said you had David. Is there anyone else on the call from your board, or just the two of you?
Just David's our finance director. He can answer the money questions. Us too.
David, what do you expect the yearly budget to be for that facility?
Yeah, we're expecting about 300,000. It's going to be the annual operating costs.
And David, about 2/3 of that is staffing, right, David? The staffs and benefits, salaries and benefits, right?
Yes, yeah. So, this is highly services. So 2/3 of that's going to go directly to personnel. So I think, Mark, you had mentioned who we're going to hire: the manager, 2 youth coaches, and AmeriCorps.
Mark, do you want to take time to plug your fundraiser in March?
Oh yeah, Dominic Cloud is offered to sleep outside in the snow and the cold on March 26th. Right, Dom?
That's right, Mark. Yep.
So thank you, Tim. We're going to do the Spectrum Sleep Out. We started this 10 years ago in Burlington. I saw it on Facebook, a place in New York City that worked with homeless kids, had executives sleeping out in the cold and the snow. So we thought we'd try it, and it's blossomed. It raises about $300,000 a year. And it's everybody sleeping outside in March. No tents, can't have a tent, And so last year we usually do it. We'll let you have a tent, Tim. We usually do it all on the lawn of the Unitarian Church with a big overhang canopy. And we were all set last year to do it in Taylor Park. We had the permission and everything, but of course COVID put a dent in that. So we did it virtually. Everybody's sleeping in their backyard, and it still raised a lot of money. So we're recruiting people up in St. Albans, and all that money will stay up there. Whatever money we raise for people doing the sleep out. So we have a crew from Ben & Jerry's doing it, trying to get Mylan involved. And John Billings from the medical center is going to do it. So anybody who wants to do it, spectrumsleepout.org. There you go. Sign up now.
Thanks, Mark.
You got it.
Mark had 2 coffees before he came tonight.
He's like this every time I talk to him. Unless he drinks coffee 24/7, this is normal Mark.
Yeah, this is Mark on decaf. What are you talking about, Tim?
We need to have Mark at every meeting.
No,
Red Bull getting wings.
No, we don't.
You don't need every meeting. Once a year will be just fine.
I just want to say it's a great program. It has a great leadership team. It's got a proven track record. It's got a great history. I am going to sleep out on the 26th as well, so I am going to sign up. You will get me. My wife was on board until she found out it was at the end of March. She was thinking more June or July. You got her if you do one then.
Well, I'm glad you're doing it. Thanks for doing it, Chad. We'll let you cuddle up with Dom that night, okay?
Well, I may be building a snow house. I may not be in a tent. I might be something looking a little more warmer.
That we allow. Mike McCarthy will do with you, right, Mike? Come on,
I
man.
will. I am planning on sleeping out as well, Mark. I don't think your spouse would let me sit this one out, but we. I just wanted to say that there's been a gap in the services that we've had for youth in the community. Really, I mean, for going back to when Common Ground was here and there was a place for young people to go where there was a caring adult and some supervision and some connection to services and, just a safe, trusting place for people to be. What Spectrum brings is experience, professionalism, a really proven program and all of this great energy that you and your staff have, Mark. So I'm just so thankful you're here to serve those youth in the community. And I'm glad we're going to be able to support you in this way. And we'll be out there sleeping on the 26th as well. So.
There you go. I heard it's going to be warm that night, Mike.
I'll be driving around to verify that those guys are going to be out too.
Him is the official checker. He's going to check. Bed check.
Quick question, Mark.
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can volunteer, whether that's at the facility or being a mentor? Is there? I imagine if there is, there's some kind of background check and everything like that. So.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, Chad. We will definitely have volunteers, and we're big into mentoring, so we'll get that going. And in meals too, we're going to start a meal train where people can buy either a hunch or, we do that in Burlington all the time. So we'll get that going too. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Have the public, general public, any questions? Please stand or raise your hand. Zach?
Mark, I just want to shout out and say that you filled me with so much joy tonight. I thank you so much for the work you're doing, and all of this just fills me with so much happiness to hear that this work is being done here. Thanks so much, man. Thanks.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks for saying that. Thank you so much. Very nice. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the resolution. Chip, you want to set that up? I think we pretty much.
Yes, let me just
forward
up real quick. Basically, it says we authorizing the city to file an application, that I'm the contact person and that Dominic is the Chief Executive Officer. And yeah, standard boilerplate.
This application is going in for April 9th?
Yes. For the April 9th, for the April meeting, yep.
Expectation on the response by when?
I mean, when we'll, you typically know that same week how the board voted, and then typically the secretary of the agency goes along with the board. So within a couple weeks, you know the results.
And a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move to approve the resolution as outlined by Chip Sawyer.
I'll second.
Second by Marie. Thank you, Marie. Any further questions on the resolution, comments?
Just thank you, Mark.
Yes, thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you very much. Really
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much,
This
Mark.
is gonna be very exciting. We're gonna have a nice opening. So, good. Okay,
I'd like to thank for all your work on this as well. Appreciate that.
you're very welcome. Thanks for all the support.
So, all those in favor, say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. So, Mark and David, thanks for joining us. You can head out if you wish, and we will be connecting with you soon.
Great. I want to thank Chip too. Chip, thanks for all your help filling this thing.
Of course, we'll finish it up this week, right?
You got it. Okay. Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone. Have a
everyone.
nice night. Thank you again.
And Chip, while we still have you, we'll move on to item number 10, which is the annual TIF district.
Yep, you'll see in your packets our annual report. Staff presents this to the city council and certifies to you that everything in here is accurate to the best of our knowledge. The report is the same template we see every year. It talks about the increment that we've received from the TIF district, some of the property value changes we've seen. Mostly they're positive and they're increasing the increment. Some of the programmatic accomplishments, projects we've finished, grants we've gotten. It's a substantial amount of funding that you'll see on this that we've received through other funding sources that actually dwarfs what we've gotten from the TIF so far, or maybe not. I might be exaggerating that a bit, but it's a huge piece of the application is what the city's brought in, as well as what we've received from the TIF to make the public projects happen. And then once we've presented this to you, then we can, staff will actually sign this and present it to VEPC to wrap it up for another year. So there's actually no action by the city council required for this, just that we present it to you. See if you have any questions.
Just, Dom, when does our program expire, if you will, for those who are listening?
I believe it's April of 23. So we have this March vote plus 2 more.
And then we receive increment for another 10 years after that.
Then it'll be time to go back and get another one, huh?
Yeah, right. I mean, these are great. Let's get a couple more.
Have any questions of Chip on this?
Dom, am I reading it right that the total development to date of these 16 projects is 82.3 million?
Yeah, that sounds.
In number 5, the performance indicators. I just thought that's a really great top level, just that people want to understand what the impact of this, decade plus worth of work.
Yeah, that's absolutely accurate.
Other questions for Chip or Dom? Okay, and you need nothing from us, Chip? You're just presenting for information?
Correct.
Okay. Last chance, anyone questions? All right, hearing none, let's move on to item number 11. Chip, we have you again.
Another required annual form, but Tammy and Dave downstairs are certifying to the city council that we have no pending suits or appeals on the grand list for April 1st, 2020. And upon receiving that, it then requires a city council signatures, and then it gets filed with our grand list. So if you pass a motion to sign this, then this will be another one of the things that we'll get your signatures on this week.
Looking for it. Does it show the growth over last year?
No, this doesn't summarize the grand list at all. It's just a certification about whether there are any suits or appeals pending.
In general, the growth is all in the TIF. The non-TIF is minimal at best.
I move the city approve the certification of no pending appeals or suits for the 2020 grand list.
Second.
Brad, seconded by Jim regarding the certification. Are there any other questions, comments? You're hearing none. All those in favor, thumbs up or say aye. Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. We're moving on to item number 12, which is loan application for the Kingman Street project. Chip, I think this is the last item, so make it good.
Yeah, these two SRF loan applications follow up on the presentation we gave last month, which talked about the funding scheme for Kingman Street. So these are the actual loans that we discussed in that packet. And Tom has more information on some of the details of the loans themselves if you so wish. But these are typical SRF applications that we've applied for before on other projects.
Is the DW SRF the drinking water fund?
Yep, and the CW is the Clean Water Fund.
Those are, those for the most part will be fixed interest rates.
There'll be worst case scenario fixed interest 2% for 30 years. No payments until 2 years post construction. And that's what we have to warn the full amounts, but with these loans, we've generally qualified for some loan forgiveness. We can't specify that now. To some extent, that's just based on overall community income, and to some extent, it's based on the state's funding, which is first come, first serve, and to some extent, it's based on stimulus funds, which they've used in the past to help us. So we think we'll get a better deal than 2%, and we think we'll get some loan forgiveness, but we just can't tell you yet what that is.
Will we be using the same funds for the water tank on Congress?
Yes.
As to how many times you can tap into that?
No limit. They're always, we've got a number of projects in the pipe, and they always encourage us to take advantage of it.
Is anyone, council?
Do you need separate motions on these, or can they be one?
So we'll need a motion to author for, I think together is fine because they're really a package, but authorizing the council and the clerk to sign, and we'll actually need physical signatures. So I'll touch base tomorrow on that piece.
Okay, so I'll move that we approve the CW SRF and the DW SRF loan applications for the King Street project.
Second.
Mike, seconded by Chad. Any further questions for Tom or Chip? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye or thumbs up. Motion passes unanimously. Chip, thanks for all your work. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to item number 13, which is approval of loan modification for engineering for Lower Weldon Street combined sewer. And so, Tom, that's yours.
Yep, this is a great deal. Back in 2018, the council approved a loan, a planning loan, for $57,300. And that was a fixed rate loan, 0 interest, no payments due for several years. The amount of the loan is increased by $26,000. However, we now have $64,650 of it forgiven completely. So the total package increases, but we're actually paying less. And this is an example of the city pulling the trigger a few years ago, and now there's some additional funding made available by the state. So we think something similar, maybe not of this magnitude, but something similar will happen on Kingman. So this is a good deal for us financially. And again, we'll need the resolution by the council to sign and authorize in the clerk as well, and then we'll need the formal signatures. And Chip can talk about the details of the Lower Weldon CSO project if needed.
Do you have anything to share on that?
This is the engineering this is the engineering grant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this could be the first big project that the city engages in to do some major actual separation out of the CSO. We have a capital project brewing that if we make a connection between Federal Street and Pearl Street, we could separate a lot of the stormwater that's just been ready to be separated in the city's downtown core area. And with every project we've done, we've gotten ready for this, like on Lake Street, for instance. But the system keeps getting reconnected the farther we go, like when we did Federal Street a couple of years ago, because we need to continue the separation of the stormwater all the way out to the trunk line, the sewer trunk line and the stormwater trunk line that sit next to each other and go north along Stevens Brook. So in our plan, this is the first big project where, we're able to make this work. Then we can, go a long way toward our obligation to the state, but also really start seeing if there's an effect on the number of overflows we get during precipitation events once we start taking some of the stormwater out of the system.
Questions for Tom or Chip on this? Hearing none.
I'll move that we approve the loan modifications for engineering on Lower Weldon CSO.
Second that.
Seconded by Jim. Any further questions, comments? All those in favor, say aye, thumbs up. We are unanimous. Thank you all. So the loan modification is approved. We'll move to the mayor's report. Marty, I think you're still on with us. Thank you for all the cleanup. I know it's been a little tricky when we get an inch or two every night and throw in some water breaks on top of that. So thanks to you and the crew for keeping things clean. I'd like to, I think this is my third year, and we get, Marty and I were talking about this on Friday, we get compliments on the way the city looks and the sidewalks and how clean they are, and then other people are not on the same page. I'd like to remind people that we don't have a crew that's just specific to plowing the roads and sidewalks. They're handling many other things, including major water breaks. So they have to balance their time. They're putting in hours, sometimes 70 hours a week to make sure everything is kept up. As far as the sidewalks go, I think some people have the expectation that it should be down to the concrete. I would say that's not going to happen. Probably more often than not. We've invested in equipment, but sometimes it just doesn't get to the bare sidewalk. And with that said, I think they're in great condition. And with the days getting a little longer and the sun getting a little warmer, I expect the sidewalks will even be better. So, Marty, do you want to share on the number of water breaks you've had in the last week?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We've had, knock on wood, we had a good stretch there for a while, but unfortunately, Monday in the heat of the storm, about 10 o'clock, we had a line pop down on North Main Street. we were able to get in and get that repaired in a few hours. We've got a crew of 8 guys that plow about 30 miles of street and 60 miles of sidewalk. We've got 2 guys that come in at 11, typically a 3rd shift, and then the other guys are all during the day. So when a water main breaks, we have to pull guys out of those plow trucks to repair the water main. So this week, everybody knows this past week, it was a tough week. It snowed almost every day. Wednesday, we had guys come in early at 4 a.m. to get on the streets and everything, get them opened up and get them ready. Our downtown sidewalks are all clear. They stuck around until about 3 o'clock that day, went home, came back in at midnight, removed snow from downtown into Thursday morning, stuck around. They're also doing water distribution classes online Wednesday and Thursday. So they participated in those from 9 to 1. So Thursday they participated in that. They all left at 1, and we had a water main break in front of Energizer at about 5 o'clock Thursday afternoon. And we had 5 guys, including Matt Moheran, stick around until about 5 o'clock Friday morning, getting that repaired, getting water back on, flushing lines, getting everything ready. And then Friday they came back in about 9 o'clock and started plowing again. And again, they do a good job. They've got a great attitude. But people, we appreciate the compliments when people take the time to call and let us know. But the people that call and suggest that we don't know what they're doing with the sidewalks and stuff is a little tough to take after witnessing what these guys do day in and day out. They try their best. I think they do a fantastic job. I think the mayor mentioned with the sidewalks. It's a lot of sidewalks. We've got great equipment. The taxpayers have been very supportive of our budgets when we go to get equipment and everything. And I think they do a good job. That snow last week, we had a lot of snow. It was heavy snow, so we have to use our snow blowers. It's a slower routine with the snow blower versus a V-blade or the broom. And with the snow blower, you end up breaking shear pins and you have to stop to repair those, and it takes time. And so they may not have been opened up as quickly as people typically expect or see, but with a heavier snow, that's what happens. But again, they do a good job. I think our sidewalks are in good shape. Obviously, the investment we've made in the sidewalks over recent years has helped with the plowing and the maintenance of those, but we've also added sidewalks in different areas and stuff. So again, it's a challenge, but these guys typically step up and do it without any expectation of accolades or anything, and do it day in and day out. So
point out that we've been able to keep that same crew for 2 years, right? In this, knock on wood, in this day and age.
Now this crew's been together going on almost, it'll be 3 years this summer that, and that helps. You've got the experience, and when you have a water break, you've got guys that are experienced in doing it. Again, like I said, Matt Moheran was there. Matt really acts as a mentor to these guys. He's got tremendous knowledge in the water system, in the wastewater system, and knows the valves. And our guy really respect him, and it helps tremendously to have a resource like that available to us. So it's a great team effort.
Matt, you're with us tonight as well, and I want to thank you for that. But also, for those who may not know, we water operator Troy Baker became ill last week, and Matt jumped in and helped keep the water plant up and moving forward. So Matt, thank you for those skills, as well as some of us saw the picture of the HVAC unit, I guess it was, up on top of the co-op structure, and he did a great job handling that as well. So I want to extend a thank you for you. You want to?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Marty. I just want to say I've been around 20 years with the Public Works guys, and this is probably one of the best crews that I've ever seen. For them to work the hours that they worked without the complaining and just going at it, that's amazing. It just amazes me. Marty's got a great crew. The leadership is top notch. So it's a pleasure to work with them. And like I said, I never once heard anybody complain. I haven't, since I've been with this crew, I haven't heard them complain or anything. So great job.
Very fortunate. I was going to say the other piece I had was, Kate, you can touch on this, but Congress and Maine, third floor is being used for public vaccines. You want to touch on that, Kate?
Sure, yes. NMC today opened a vaccine clinic on the third floor of Congress and Maine. We moved our clinic from the hospital where we were doing shots for healthcare workers in phase 1A. And then we started adding phase 2 doses. So we combined what was going to be 2 clinics and 1 in the space on Main Street, which has been really great. I think the space works out well. And it's nice to be downtown. So everybody's psyched about that.
Don't have anything else?
Phase 2, 75 and up right now. So if anyone knows anyone that's 75 and older, have them go on to healthvermont.gov and sign up for a vaccine.
Yeah, please, actually, because we have doses not accounted for in the next few days. So if you know of somebody who needs an appointment, we can literally get them in like maybe tomorrow or the day after. We need to fill those slots. So please get the word out.
Hey, I had a question from somebody who asked if they are homebound. Is there an opportunity for them to be able to register and have someone go to their house?
Yeah, home health and the EMS are going to be working together to do homebound population. Chad, chime in if you've got more info on that. I know that home health has started, and I think EMS must be close as well.
Correct. So there's both Franklin County Home Health and AmCare both applied for the RFP for that, and they both, I believe, were accepted. So they will be doing that in Franklin County.
Okay.
Yep.
So if somebody's looking to get help, Marty, just have them reach out to their doctor and say, hey, I need, put me in touch with somebody if they're wondering or need help doing it.
Okay, yeah, I'll pass that along. Thanks.
Go around with council persons. Jim Pelkey, we'll start with you. Do you have anything?
I really don't have anything to report other than I echo everyone else saying what a great job our city public works department is doing. Marty, you and your crew are amazing. Please let them know that. And Matt, we also appreciate you as well. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jim.
Kate?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've been up at Hardak a bunch over the last few weeks, and it is so amazing up there. The ski hill, the sledding hill, the new lodge is amazing, and really want to commend Kelly and Andrew and the other staff who are up there and staffing it really well, and sometimes dealing with people who can be a little bit challenging around wanting to wear a mask up there. And they're just doing a great job of it. I mean, it's just such a great spot, and to see so many families out there enjoying the weather is really cool.
I would just add on that note, probably an unsung hero of Hardak is Bruce Pelkey. I get a text message from him at 8 o'clock at night giving me a heads up that they're making snow, and he's up there. He works all day at a regular job and shows up there at night and on weekends to make sure those guys have snow and stuff, and does a tremendous job, puts in a lot of hours, and is in it for the right reason.
Yeah, totally agree. We should get him some kind of special award or something.
Right.
I would add, Marty, that's not a 1-year thing. He's been doing that for 15 or 20. I don't know how long it's been.
And he's up there in the fall getting ready. When nobody's up around there, he's up there making sure the equipment's ready to go, and definitely does a great job for us.
To your point, he volunteers, he extends those hours for the right reasons, and gets little or no accolades whatsoever. So
yeah.
Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to just commend Curry. And I don't think she's with us this evening, but as folks are getting ready for town meeting day. She's really geared up to accept the sort of early vote requests. And I know she's also going to have a COVID safe protocol again for town meeting election, but would really encourage people to go online to the My Voter page on the Secretary of State's website and request an early ballot if they want it mailed to them, because we're not doing the universal vote by mail, but folks can get an early ballot from the clerk's office. Yeah, and I wanted to say what Kate was saying about HARDAC is exactly what I was going to say, so I won't belabor that, but it has just been a godsend to be able to do something outside that my daughter can do with other kids in a safe way right now on the weekend. That's so important, and having HARDAC offer that opportunity has been really important to a lot of families. The other thing I wanted to say was just that I was in reading the minutes, noticing that we were talking about the December 1st tax letter and sort of the economic reforecast that was coming up in January. And, you know, I didn't exactly have a crystal ball. I had some of the data ahead of time, but the yield bill that's going to set the property tax rates really confirmed a lot of what I believed, in that the sales taxes that contribute to the education fund really filled a lot of the hole that we had. So you're going to see essentially flat property taxes recommended. That's already come out of Ways and Means and is kind of hanging out to make sure that the numbers are all right. But I think the money you're going to see is nothing like the really scary 9% increase. It's going to be a 0.5 or a 1% increase on the non-homestead rates.
Yeah, I would echo that communities would love to have the resource that we do with HARDAC. Ski lift, sliding hill, cross-country trail, groomed cross-country trails, etc. So we're very fortunate from that perspective. Marie?
And with any luck, a pool.
Yep, a couple comments. First of all, I have not made it a point to go to HARDAC yet, but I've seen a lot of things on Facebook about it. It looks like a fabulous place, and I think we are very lucky and to have that facility. That is a gem, and I think it's a great job everybody's done with that facility as well. Also, regarding the sidewalks, I had the occasion to twice today walk from Portland Glass to my house and then back from my house to Portland Glass. Nice little walk. But anyway, the sidewalks were beautiful. It was clear sailing all the way. It was a beautiful day, cold, but you dress for it. It was great. So kudos to Marty and his group once again for all that they do. And the streets have been in fantastic shape. So I hear the trucks go by all night long, and that crew is busy. So thank you very much for all your service.
Thank you.
That's about all I have to add.
Great. I don't think there's anyone else. Did I miss anyone?
Marie, next time you
Adwood.
see one of those trucks, they'll probably give you a ride to Portland Glass, just saying.
Adwood, yeah.
Tim, you were talking about earlier, the days are getting a little bit longer, so they're getting a little bit warmer. Kate could probably tell us to the minute how long the day is. You get an idea for us, Kate?
I actually don't, because I only count the minutes. We gained 2
Oh.
minutes and 52 seconds today.
There you go.
Hey, I
Yeah.
actually thought about you today when I got up early, and it was actually almost daylight out, and that was just a little after 6. So and then tonight again, on the flip side of that, it was still fairly light after 5 o'clock. So that was nice. I thought of you.
I just want to remind people, if they have a hydrant out front that may be blocked with snow, to just get out there and just shovel around it, just so if there is a fire, it's easily accessible and the firefighters can get to it very quickly. And the last thing I just want to say is, you know, I could echo everything that everyone else has said, but I would also want to mention the businesses in downtown St. Albans are just so accommodating. My wife was poking around up there for something and wasn't having much luck. And everyone was saying, hey, you know what? I don't have that, but you could go here. They might have it. So, it's just they help each other to such extent. And, they're so helpful when you go in there. And, of course, you always get something great when you're there. But it's just encouraging when I go around and you can get that kind of help from, one business to another. So shop downtown if you can.
Add to that, Chad, that many of them had one of their better Christmas seasons, holiday seasons. The
Those
commitment.
downtown cards are still rolling in pretty good shape, so.
So just the commitment of not only St. Albans residents, but Franklin County residents to support those businesses has been outstanding. I had a conversation with one of the individuals who owns a restaurant in town, and they're just trying to hold on till the end of April. This is a slow period, so if you can support them during these months of February, March, April, they're historically slow anyway. But if we can get back to warm weather, they're all looking forward to it, and hopefully some other activities happening as well. So, anything last comments, anyone? No. Okay, let's. We're gonna get stuck here because Mr. Hawkins isn't here. I'm not sure who's gonna.
I wondered if we should just table these till the Hawk can ease through them.
Hey, wait a minute. I usually do the seconds. I'll take over.
All right, Jim. 16, approval of warrants for 130.
Move to approve the warrant 13121.
Second.
Chad, motion by Jim. Any questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye or thumbs up.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 17.
Move to approve the regular city council meeting of 1/12/21.
Second.
By Jim, second by Chad. Are there any corrections, comments on the minutes? Oh, you read them. No changes, Mike? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Move to approve the special city council meeting of 12/21/20.
Second.
By Jim, second by Chad for approval of minutes from 12/21. Any comments or corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Move to approve the special city council meeting of 1/28/21.
Second.
By Jim, second by Chad for approval of minutes for 1/28/21. Any comments or corrections? Seeing none or hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Thumbs up.
Aye. You did okay, Chad, but you got to be faster in those seconds.
Well, now that we have 6 minutes left, I got some other stuff to talk about.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
So
moved.
moved. Oh, second.
By Chad, all in favor say aye. Thank you all. Have
Aye.
a good week.